Just 1 minute ago, British politics was shaken to its very core. In a move no one could have predicted, King Charles has directly confronted Keir Starmer, shutting him down in the wake of Reform UK's shocking election triumph. What was once unthinkable has now become reality. The monarchy, long seen as neutral and untouchable, has entered the battlefield of politics. And Westminster is reeling in disbelief. The events that have unfolded in Britain are nothing short of extraordinary. The 2025 elections, which were expected to be a routine contest between Labour and the Conservatives, have instead delivered an earthquake that has toppled decades of political assumptions. Reform UK, under the leadership of Nigel Farage, has surged to victories that no analyst, no strategist and no pollster believed possible. Council after council, constituency after constituency fell in rapid succession to a party that had once been dismissed as nothing more than a fringe protest movement. The numbers are staggering, the shockwave's undeniable. Reform UK has not only broken through, it has redrawn the political map of the nation. And now, as if that were not seismic enough, King Charles himself has stepped forward in a move that has left Parliament scrambling and Starmer cornered. This confrontation between Crown and party leader is unprecedented in modern history. For centuries, the monarchy has been viewed as the stabilising hand above politics, a force of unity and continuity. Yet the King's decision to intervene following Reform's sweeping victories has thrown Britain into uncharted waters. Reports from insiders describe a tense and extraordinary exchange between King Charles and Keir Starmer, where the monarch is said to have delivered a blunt message, one that left the Labour leader visibly shaken. While the exact words remain behind closed doors, sources insist the tone was unmistakable. The King was shutting down Starmer's attempt to downplay Reform's rise and was signalling that the people's voice could no longer be ignored. For Labour, the timing could not be worse. The party, already rattled by heavy losses, is now facing an existential crisis. Local councillors are deserting, MPs whisper of rebellion, and once loyal supporters are turning to Farage in droves. The cracks within Labour are spreading at lightning speed, and Starmer, who once projected himself as a steady, unshakable figure, now finds himself isolated, weakened, and under immense pressure. With King Charles weighing in, the Labour leader's authority has been dealt a blow from which recovery may prove impossible. The wider political class is equally stunned. For the Conservatives, the humiliation is bitter. A party that once controlled the vast machinery of local government has been reduced to shadows of its former dominance. Many Tories fear they are now staring into the abyss, overtaken by a populist force they failed to contain. But it is Labour, not the Conservatives, that has been hit the hardest. Reform UK's victories have come largely at Labour's expense, tearing into strongholds once thought untouchable and exposing just how far the party has drifted from its base. And now, with the monarchy itself stepping into the fray, the sense of crisis has escalated to a level no one has ever witnessed in the modern political era. The symbolism of the King's intervention cannot be overstated. The monarchy, by its very nature, represents continuity, tradition, and stability. Its power lies not in commanding armies or passing laws, but in embodying the spirit of the nation above political battles. For King Charles, to break this neutrality is to signal that the very foundations of Britain's political order are under threat. In challenging Starmer, he has not merely spoken to one man, he has spoken to an entire political class that is now on notice. Reform UK is no longer an outsider. It is the force at the centre of Britain's future, and the Crown itself has acknowledged this reality. For Farage, this moment is nothing less than vindication. A career built on defying the establishment has culminated in a triumph so complete that even the monarchy has been forced to take notice. To his supporters, the King's rebuke of Starmer is proof that their movement is not only legitimate but unstoppable. Farage, long dismissed as a troublemaker by the political elite, now stands as a figure capable of reshaping Britain itself. Every victory his party secures, every seat it captures, is portrayed as the will of the people rising against decades of betrayal. And with King Charles stepping in, reform's rise has been given an almost historic validation that no speech, no rally, and no campaign could ever match. Yet this moment also carries enormous risk. The monarchy, by intervening, has crossed a line that generations of rulers have avoided. The danger is clear. If the crown is now seen as partisan, even indirectly, the very legitimacy of the monarchy itself could be drawn into question. Britain is now witnessing not only a populist surge, but a constitutional drama that pits the old order against a new political force with momentum that shows no sign of slowing. The question now gripping the nation is simple but profound. Can Starmer survive? Can Labour recover? Or has the balance of power already shifted beyond their control? The days ahead will be decisive. Every statement from Labour, every move from Reform UK, and every word spoken or even implied by the monarchy will shape the path forward. Britain is staring into an uncertain future where the rules no longer apply, the old assumptions no longer hold, and the stakes could not be higher. One thing, however, is already clear. The shock of Reform UK's rise and the King's confrontation with Starmer has rewritten the script of British politics forever. As the dust begins to settle after Reform UK's astonishing sweep, the mood inside Westminster has shifted from disbelief to panic. Keir Starmer, once hailed as Labour's steady hand, is now fighting for political survival in a storm unlike any other. The election numbers are brutal. Dozens of council strongholds have been lost. Key mayoralties have fallen. And constituencies once considered impenetrable, Labour fortresses have collapsed into the hands of Nigel Farage's insurgent party. What makes this defeat all the more devastating is the speed with which it unfolded. In a matter of hours, decades of Labour dominance in local politics were dismantled, and the image of Labour as the natural home of working-class Britain was shattered before the eyes of the nation. Inside the party, tempers are flaring. Senior figures are openly questioning Starmer's leadership, with whispers of rebellion growing louder by the hour. For years, Labour MPs reassured themselves that the populist threat posed by Farage could be contained, that his movement was a passing storm. But the sheer scale of Reform's victories has blown that illusion to pieces. Party insiders admit privately that Labour's base has been eroded, its message no longer resonates, and its leadership has failed to connect with voters who feel ignored and betrayed. For many within the ranks, Starmer is no longer the solution but the problem, a leader who promised strength but has delivered weakness. The crisis is not confined to Labour alone. The Conservatives, already weakened by years of division, corruption scandals and public disillusionment, are facing their own reckoning. Local associations, once loyal to the Tory machine, are questioning whether the party has any future as a dominant force. Reform UK's rise has not only humiliated Labour, but has exposed the Conservatives as vulnerable, hollow and unable to inspire the electorate. In some areas, Reform's victories came directly at Tory expense, a humiliation that Tory MPs cannot ignore. Together, both of Britain's main parties now face the same terrifying question. What if the two-party system itself is collapsing? Into this chaos steps King Charles. His intervention has magnified the sense of urgency and transformed an electoral shock into a national crisis. Palace sources suggest that the King, deeply alarmed by the scale of Reform's success, decided he could no longer remain silent. His conversation with Starmer, interpreted as a direct shutdown of the Labour leader's attempt to minimise Reform's rise, has sent shockwaves through Westminster. Commentators describe it as a constitutional thunderclap, a moment that redraws the boundaries of royal neutrality. By stepping into the political arena, the King has shifted the balance of power in ways that Britain has not seen for centuries. For Starmer, the consequences are devastating. Already battered by electoral defeat and internal dissent, he must now contend with the symbolic weight of the crown itself standing against him. Even if King Charles did not intend to align with reform, the perception is unavoidable. The monarch has spoken, and his words have dealt a crushing blow to Labour's credibility. Every attempt by Starmer to rally his party or calm the storm is now viewed through the lens of the King's intervention. His authority is diminished, his leadership questioned, and his future uncertain. Meanwhile, Farage seizes the moment with ruthless precision. In rally after rally, he presents himself not just as the leader of a rising party, but as the voice of the people. He frames Reform's victories as a direct repudiation of the elite, insisting that the monarchy's confrontation with Starmer proves how deeply the establishment fears the people's choice. To his supporters, this is no longer politics as usual. It is a revolution, a reclaiming of power from institutions that have grown arrogant, complacent and corrupt. Each reform win is celebrated as evidence that ordinary citizens are taking back control, and Farage, with his sharp rhetoric and instinct for drama, positions himself as the inevitable successor to a broken system. The tension is palpable across Britain. In pubs, workplaces and online forums, citizens are no longer debating whether reform has changed politics. They are debating how far this change will go. Some believe Farage could replace Starmer as the leader of the opposition. Others whisper of an even greater ambition that Farage could one day walk into Downing Street itself. With each passing hour, what once seemed impossible feels more plausible. And with the monarchy now entangled in the crisis, the stakes are higher than ever before. Yet beneath the excitement and the fury lies a deeper unease. Britain has entered uncharted territory. The political establishment, once confident of its control, is now fractured and uncertain. The Labour Party is on the brink of implosion. The Conservatives are leaderless and adrift. And the monarchy, once the guardian of neutrality, has placed itself at the centre of the storm. The rules that guided Britain for generations no longer apply, and no one can predict what will happen next. The future has become a battlefield, and the battle has only just begun. The atmosphere inside Westminster has now turned from mere alarm to outright chaos. What began as a shocking electoral upset has spiralled into a full-blown political crisis, threatening to engulf every pillar of Britain's establishment. Keir Starmer, once portrayed as Labour's steady hand, is now staring into the abyss. Behind closed doors, the whispers of dissent within his party have grown into something darker: open plotting, urgent meetings and private conversations about succession. Senior Labour MPs, terrified by the scale of Reform UK's victories, are weighing their loyalty against their own survival. For them, clinging to Starmer could mean political extinction, and yet abandoning him could fracture the party beyond repair. It is a dilemma with no easy escape, and the pressure is mounting by the hour. In this maelstrom, King Charles's intervention hangs over every discussion like a shadow. His decision to confront Starmer has not only shaken the Labour leader's confidence, but has also emboldened critics within the party. They see the King's move as a signal that Starmer has lost authority, not only in the eyes of voters, but in the eyes of the nation itself. If the Crown doubts him, whispers one insider, then what chance does he have left with the people? This perception is more devastating than any electoral defeat, for it transforms Starmer from a struggling leader into a weakened figure whose legitimacy is openly questioned. Meanwhile, Farage senses opportunity and strikes with precision. Reform UK is not content with local victories. It is preparing for a larger conquest. Already, party strategists are eyeing parliamentary seats, constituencies that were once written off as Labour or Tory safe havens. The narrative is clear: the two-party system is broken, and Reform UK is the only force capable of speaking for ordinary citizens. Farage frames himself as the man of the moment. The leader who stood against the establishment for years, mocked and ridiculed, only to emerge as the champion of a people betrayed by those in power. With the monarchy's intervention looming large, Farage seizes the chance to frame the entire system as rigged against the public, insisting that even the Crown is desperate to hold back the rising tide of reform. The power of this message is undeniable. Across the nation, anger that once simmered has now erupted into open defiance. In town halls, marketplaces and online communities, citizens rally behind the idea that the establishment has lost touch. For many, Starmer has become the symbol of this detachment. A man speaking in polished tones while failing to hear the voices of those he claims to represent. The King's confrontation has amplified this perception, making Starmer look not only weak, but isolated, cornered by forces he cannot control. For the Conservatives, the nightmare is equally profound. Once able to rely on their reputation as Britain's natural party of government, the Tories now find themselves watching helplessly as reform peels away their voters. They are not merely losing elections, they are losing their identity. Tory MPs mutter in private that Reform UK's rise feels unstoppable, that Nigel Farage has tapped into something primal that no amount of policy speeches or party conferences can compete with. For decades, the Tories and Labour operated as the twin guardians of British politics, shaping the nation's future between them. Now both face the prospect of being eclipsed, their dominance broken by a populist movement that refuses to play by the old rules. And hovering above it all is the monarchy. King Charles, by stepping into the crisis, has transformed it from a partisan struggle into a constitutional drama. Every word attributed to him, every rumour of palace concern is dissected by the media, debated by politicians and scrutinised by the public. Was his confrontation with Starmer a genuine rebuke? Was it a warning meant to preserve stability, or was it, as some reform supporters insist, evidence that even the Crown fears their movement? Whatever the truth, perception is reality in politics. And the perception is clear. The King has shut down Starmer at a moment when Labour could least afford another blow. The stakes could not be higher. Britain is now caught in a triangle of power unlike anything in living memory: the monarchy, the populist insurgency of Reform UK, and a collapsing establishment struggling to hold on. Each force pulls against the others, creating a storm of uncertainty. For the public, this is not just politics anymore, it is history unfolding in real time. The rules that governed Britain for generations are breaking down, and no one knows what new order will emerge. The question is no longer whether Reform UK can rise, it is whether the old political system can survive. As the crisis deepens, one thing becomes unavoidable. Keir Starmer cannot escape the spotlight. Every move he makes, every word he utters is magnified. Each decision carries with it the weight of a leader not only fighting for his party, but for his very relevance in the face of forces greater than himself. The King has spoken, Farage is surging, and the establishment trembles as Britain teeters on the brink of transformation. The crisis has now entered a stage that few dared to imagine. What was once dismissed as a temporary shock is rapidly becoming a full-scale political realignment. Labour, fractured and reeling, finds itself trapped in a cycle of self-destruction. Senior MPs are holding secret meetings, debating whether Starmer can survive the week, let alone the year. Some whisper of leadership challenges, others speak of defection, while a handful are even exploring back-channel contacts with Reform UK. For them, political survival outweighs loyalty, and the fear of being swept away by Farage's wave is too great to ignore. The party that once styled itself as the natural voice of the people is now consumed by infighting, division and panic. Inside Downing Street, the atmosphere is no better. The Conservatives, humiliated by Reform's advance, are facing existential questions of their own. Can they rebuild, or has the centre-right space been permanently claimed by Farage's movement? Party grandees admit privately that the Tory brand has been fatally damaged, eroded by scandal, complacency and years of failing to connect with ordinary voters. Reform's surge has exposed not just Labour's weakness, but the fragility of the entire two-party order. Britain's political map, once so predictable, has been torn apart. And in the rubble, only Reform UK seems to be standing tall. But looming above this battlefield is the monarchy, its presence now impossible to ignore. The King's confrontation with Starmer has changed everything. No longer can the crown be seen as an untouchable symbol above politics. It has been pulled into the storm, willingly or not. Every word, every gesture from the palace is now subject to microscopic analysis. Did the king overstep? Did he intend to silence Starmer? Or was he acting as a stabilising force in a country losing faith in its institutions? These questions dominate the headlines, but the answers remain elusive. What is undeniable, however, is that the monarchy's neutrality has been shattered, and the implications are historic. For Farage, this is political gold. He portrays the king's rebuke of Starmer not as a threat to his movement, but as proof of its legitimacy. Even the Crown has been forced to acknowledge us, his supporters proclaim. To them, this is the ultimate validation. The establishment, from Parliament to Buckingham Palace, has been forced to recognise reform as a power that cannot be denied. Farage thrives on this narrative, weaving it into his speeches, hammering home the message that the people are winning and the old elites are terrified. His rallies grow larger, his voice louder, his movement more energised with every passing day. Yet beneath the triumph lies a dangerous tension. The monarchy's involvement risks becoming a double-edged sword. To traditionalists, the king's intervention was necessary, a desperate attempt to steady a nation on the edge of political collapse. To Reform's base, it is proof that the establishment will do anything, even break centuries of neutrality, to cling to power. The country is dividing not just between left and right, Labour and Reform, but between those who see the monarchy as a protector of order and those who now view it as part of the system they despise. For Britain, this is uncharted territory. The monarchy's role has always been symbolic, but now it has become political. And in a polarised nation, symbolism can ignite firestorms. Keir Starmer, caught in the middle, has never looked weaker. His attempts to project authority fall flat, undermined by whispers of rebellion within his party and the shadow of the king's intervention. Once seen as a steadying force, he now appears as a man out of his depth, cornered by forces far beyond his control. Every television interview, every common speech is dissected with ruthless scrutiny. Is he defiant or is he desperate? Is he standing firm or simply clinging on? The perception of weakness is fatal in politics, and Starmer is drowning in it. His enemies sense it, his party fears it, and the public cannot ignore it. The wider establishment is no less unsettled. Civil servants, military officials and business leaders are all watching events unfold with rising unease. Britain's stability, once taken for granted, is now openly questioned. Analysts warn that the collapse of the two-party system, combined with royal intervention, could lead to constitutional crises unseen in centuries. What happens if the monarchy is perceived as partisan? What happens if a populist movement, now legitimised by both the ballot box and the Crown's involvement, sweeps into power? These are no longer academic questions. They are immediate, urgent and dangerous. The nation feels as though it is standing at a precipice. The familiar structures of politics are collapsing, and no one knows what will rise in their place. Farage and Reform UK promise a revolution of the people. Starmer and Labour cling desperately to survival. The Conservatives scramble for relevance, and the monarchy itself, by stepping into the storm, has transformed a political drama into a national reckoning. Britain is no longer debating policies or election. It is debating power itself. Who holds it? Who has lost it? And who will claim it in the days to come? The question now echoing across the nation is simple yet profound. Can Britain's old order survive? Or is a new era about to begin?